I often neglect to do environment and landscape paintings, so let's remedy that. I decided to do Windansea Beach in San Diego, California. It's not as popular as La Jolla Shores or La Jolla Cove, but it's a nice little hidden spot. We are going to start off with a reference image to base our drawing off of. To do this, we are going to go to the wrench tool at the top left by the gallery, select the reference, and then import your image. As you could see, I grabbed a picture of Windansea Beach from a photographer from the website 500px. I wanted to have the clouds point at the setting sun for my composition. Of course, if you looked at the intro to this page, you'll see that I had to completely flip that. That's because I felt the composition didn't work halfway through this. I probably should have noticed that earlier on. Once I finish the very loose sketch, I go to make the much more refined sketch. But first, I want to use perspective, so we're going to go to the same wrench tool, go to drawing guides, pick perspective. You can move the horizontal line, you could add points, you do a whole bunch of other stuff, but I'm keeping this very simple. Once I'm done with the drawing, it's time to get ready to color, and I wanted to make sure I had a palette already in mind. So I'll grab another reference image of Windansea Beach from a different photographer, and I just start picking colors I plan on using. Of course, you can see the way these two images are processed is very different, but I'm not copying them one-to-one anyway, so it should be fine. And now for the painting. To start blocking out the sky and some of the sunlight, I start with the airbrush tool, large and very low opacity. And for the clouds, I use the edge control brush. To start adding value to the clouds and to pretty much everything else, I'm going to be using clipping mask. I can't believe I never thought to do this. I feel like a total noob, but it works perfectly. You don't have to be super cautious with your values, and of course you can easily change them within the clipping mask if need be. I use a regular round render brush for painting in the rocks and eventually the hut as well. And on occasion, I try to be organized and name my layers. I admit, I often screw that task up. For the sun, I use the draw shape tool. I think that's what it's called. Basically, you draw a circle, but hold it toward the end of the circle or the square, whatever shape you're trying to make. And it'll give you an option to edit the shape. Continuing to use clipping mask, I am adding value and highlights to the foreground rocks. Also speeding this up as it will take a while. For the water, I use a combination of the edge control as well as a simple sketch brush with a low opacity and of course a very baby blue color to build intensity, essentially. Adding some more orange behind the sun by just using a typical soft airbrush set really large with a low opacity. As you may have noticed, I flipped the sky around. It just felt that it made much more sense composition-wise. It's something I should have caught on, but I was trying to stick too close to the reference images. Of course, we have to add the hut, which is probably the most well-known landmark at Windansea Beach. Definitely can't forget that, otherwise you wouldn't really know what beach it was in the first place. Of course, we continue to use clipping mask to build value, of course. And for the details with the feather, I just basically use a sketch brush and just put in the work. Roll up your sleeve and just get to work. Tedious, but I couldn't think of any other way. I didn't want to rely on a texture brush. To differentiate the feathers, or the leaves, I use a edge control brush to create shadows between them. And for the highlights, of course, just a typical pencil brush, typical sketch brush. I believe it was a technical pencil. I really wasn't feeling the rocks, so I kept working at them. Just something wasn't feeling quite right about them. I think it's okay. I'm a little happy with them now. Of course, I had to also make sure to shift where the color affected the rocks since the sun is in a completely different position now. I think it turned out okay. I hope so, at least. Added a darker background, or darker sky for more drama. It always looks nice. And of course, can't forget to add waves. Always gotta add waves. I mean, it is the ocean after all. After that, I duplicate the image, name the new one Noise, and then collapse all the layers, and then run a noise pass, just to make it look a little bit like a photograph. Give it that little photo quality. Thank you for sitting through this. I'm sure I'll wind up hating it in like a year. But for now, I'm satisfied and it kept me occupied. Thank you for watching.